Hey everybody, Dr. Dan here, and this is the lecture for our first module 1 and our first two assignments. So what you're going to do this week is pretty easy. You're going to read two things. One of them is called "It Came in the First Ships" by an author named Thomas McCraw, and it's as I haven't read it recently, but it's really short. I think it's maybe a page or two. No big deal there. And then you're going to read a little piece on capitalism. So let me talk about these two things briefly and just what I want you to get out of them. First of all, this McCraw article that came on the first ships, he's really talking about a historian named Carl Degler who wrote this or came up with this idea that capitalism has been here since the arrival of the British and the first permanent settlements in Jamestown and then Massachusetts Bay around 1607 and in the early 1600s for Massachusetts Bay. So if you know anything about the early times of North America, long before it was the United States, the first permanent settlement is in Jamestown, which is in Virginia. And basically the first group came over from England, the Virginia Company, and that was actually a private company that formed in England. So already this is a company going out exploring, and it's a stock, stockholders own this company, and they go explore. And first they go to Roanoke in the early 1600s, and the colony is lost, and people are never heard from again. And then they go to Jamestown in 1607 and establish this permanent colony. That's like basic U.S. history, and it was like a really bad camping trip, for lack of a better word. Around the Chesapeake Bay, there's a lot of mosquitoes. The water's rancid. There was a lot of disease. The people that came over had no idea how to grow food. They had to rely on the Native Americans to help them with food, and that got ugly really quick. But the point is, for our class, is that there was a guy named Thomas Rolfe, and he discovered a strain of tobacco that would grow in the Chesapeake Bay, and that became this big cash crop. So they started to make money by selling tobacco back to Europe, or back to England, I should say. And really this idea of tobacco farming in the early 1600s, the first load of African slaves comes into Jamestown around 1619. Slavery begins, and this profit motive to exploit humans and to exploit the land. That's kind of the root of capitalism, this free enterprise that people are going to come here, make a lot of money, make a lot of profit, regardless of the cost to other individuals and to the environment. So, slavery is really tightly tied into capitalism during the first, during the beginnings of colonization of North America. Now, again, that's 1607, so there was no United States and there was no 13 colonies. That's just English settlements here. Of course, the United States wouldn't become the United States until the 1790s with the official ratification of the Constitution, but that's another story entirely. So anyway, the whole point is that if you look back in the history starting at 1607, everything's about making money. So Degler's claim that capitalism comes in the first ships is based on the fact that everything here has always been about making money, and for individuals too, private enterprise, as opposed to something like communism where the workers all control the means of production. Won't get into that right now. But anyway, that's what Degler means. So you'll read about that. You'll read about slavery. Really short article. The other thing you're going to read is, I think it's a couple of pages long, and it's defining capitalism, communism, fascism, and socialism. And this is sort of, gets more into politics than economics, but what I want you to take away from this is just, again, I know I've mentioned this 40 times already, but you need to know what capitalism is and free market economy, and as opposed to socialism. So capitalism, we, the people, individuals, you can start your own business, you'll own it, Bill Gates, Microsoft, or Zuckerberg and Facebook, whatever, as opposed to the government owning everything. So that's kind of the difference between capitalism and communism. And that concept of capitalism and the ability to profit or do what you want for your business is tightly tied into the concept of liberty, because it's a freedom. I mean, it's a freedom for you to run your business any way you want. So, that has caused issues over the years. When we get into the Gilded Age, which is after the Civil War, so after 1865, and we're not going to get there for 6 or 7 weeks, but that's a time when the first large corporations formed. The first two biggies are Carnegie Steel, Andrew Carnegie, and Standard Oil, which is John D. Rockefeller, and those guys, their businesses got to be so big that they controlled the market, and actually, in some cases, you look at J.P. Morgan, a big banker who was a financier during that time. His bank really controlled the national. Had as much money as the government, if not more. So this idea of freedom to do what you want when you run your own business is great, but if you own all the oil refineries in the case of Rockefeller, or if you have cornered the market on steel production and you have a monopoly in that you own, the iron ore mines, the shipping companies, all the steel mills, all the steel fabricating stuff, then that's really unfair competition. So you're going to start to see in the late 1800s, when we get there, the government's going to step in and start regulating what you can do. And so, we still have that struggle today. Businesses don't want any government regulation. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do. And certainly the Federal Trade Commission make sure that there can't be a monopoly. In other words, Verizon can't buy all the cell phone companies, although they could, because then it would be unfair to consumers. They could set their own prices. So this idea of liberty and government interference in business is a thread we're going to think about. But and I know I'm getting off track, but anyway, think about capitalism and free market enterprise. There's still this thread of business should be unfettered. You can do whatever you want, as opposed to making sure consumers are protected. And also, when we talk about food production and other stuff and consumer protections, this government interference versus free market enterprise is always a struggle. So I know I'm talking way too much, but it's kind of fun stuff. So think about it. Do the readings. They're really short. We'll have a discussion post. I'll get it out there for this week, and then I don't know what we're doing next week yet. I think intellectual property, but don't worry about it. We'll get there. It's cool. So sort of our business innovation, I think, this week, we'll call it capitalism on its own is an innovation, and U.S. capitalism is real interesting. So anyway, I'll shut up, promise. Have a very safe week. I wish you all well, and have a great day. I hope everything's going well for you.